Hi, welcome to the show. I'm pleased to introduce Michael Robinson of localpassing.com. Michael Robinson is a diversely talented professional with over 35 years of experience in pharmacy management, or as Michael likes to say, the people business. Welcome to the show, Michael.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Kirsten.
Mike, I understand you founded localpassing.com. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Well, before we discuss this project, I need to point out that while we instinctively avoid anything to do with the topic of death, it is the one common denominator which unites us all. If you can hear my voice, this topic is highly relevant to you and every person you love, without exception. Getting to the topic at hand, localpassing.com is a new internet service that provides the public with an affordable means to announce the death of a loved one.
So you're a pharmacist by profession. This seems a little bit out of your field. How did you become involved in this type of project?
Chalk it up to bad genetics. I was raised in a family of 6. Over the past 8 years, I buried one brother, one sister, my father, my father-in-law, and most recently my mother. Due to health concerns, I was the point person for all decisions associated with most of the burials.
I'm sorry for your troubles. How did this experience lead to localpassing.com?
From 2002, when my brother passed, to 2010, when my mother passed, the cost of publishing an obituary in our local paper had risen from about $70 to about $800. I have been told recently that this has increased further to almost $1,000. And it is not unheard of in our area for the cost of publishing an obituary to exceed $2,000. You could say that I became an educated consumer who felt there just had to be a better way.
So you decided to find a better way based on your experiences?
Yes. And I also understood that the less affluent among us were being shut out of the ability to announce the death of a loved one. There are many in our society that simply do not have the money in their estate to cover this outrageous cost. So when did they cease to matter? This issue has really stirred a passion in me.
So tell me about the genesis of your work.
Well, I knew that the internet was a valuable tool for the flow of information. And I noticed that funeral directors, confronted with this massive increase in the cost of obituaries, attempted to find another way. So most of the competent funeral homes have developed websites where an obituary can be published at no cost to the family.
Well, that sounds like actually a good solution, isn't it?
Well, it is, but there's a problem. It's simply not practical for every member of the public to search every funeral home website every day to find out who died. You can Google a person's name to find the obituary, but that presumes you know that the person has passed.
Gosh, Mike, that is a very good point.
Kirsten, keep in mind that just behind the front page, the sports page, and the most widely viewed newspaper page is the obit section. Proper notice of passing of friends and family is an important element of our culture.
Well, you really got my interest, Mike. You have identified a real problem. Many of the most vulnerable among us are being excluded from proper notice through the obituary process when a loved one has passed. And the rest of the population is subject to what I would call price gouging during the bereavement process.
Yeah, thank you for understanding my motivation and the societal impact of the burdensome pricing structure newspapers have imposed on the public.
Tell me a little bit more about your work.
My website creates and maintains a database of the deceased. A critical part of that database, we include the web link to the funeral home websites containing the obituary. A member of the public can log on and find out in an instant who has died and the specifics of the burial arrangement free of charge. The bereaved family pays a nominal $80 fee, and the most vulnerable members of our society can have this rebated.
And Mike, what areas do you serve?
Well, localpassing.com is a paradox, and that is not really confined to local passings at all. While we currently serve the greater Providence, Rhode Island area, we will have a national rollout soon.
So other than cost, how are you different from something like the newspaper?
Well, local newspapers can serve a geographic location. Localpassing.com can accommodate multiple locations for a single obituary. Say, for instance, if a person lived 6 months out of the year in Smithfield, Rhode Island, and 6 months in Venice, Florida, the single listing would post in both locations. If the immediate family of the deceased were spread out amongst several cities, supposing you had one brother that lived in Key Largo, Florida, and another that lived in Nome, Alaska, basically a listing would be posted in each market. The link would then carry back to the obituary of their own local funeral home.
Mike, that's really important. So how many of my friends, so many actually have relatives across the country, and just being able to reach out to them in this scenario, it makes total sense.
Yes, localpassing.com is a major leap forward in the public's ability to get obituary information. Localpassing.com enables a user to request daily emails for anyone passing in your town. You could, as a subscriber, you could just log in and say, tell me everybody in Cranston who died, and you would get, anyone who filled that would get it. When my parents wintered in Florida, it was very frustrating for them not to be able to get obits from Rhode Island. In an advanced feature, there are many professionals that basically need to know this type of information. For example, an estate attorney, say a doctor that was a geriatrician. Everybody's familiar with the high schools and college alumni associations. These people could go in and actually make a person-specific request, and when that person entered the website, they would receive an email as to the person's passing. And there are many professionals where this would find this very helpful.
So, Mike, tell me, did you encounter any problems or challenges during the creation of this website?
Yes, no website quite like this had ever been built, and there were some technological challenges that had to be overcome. But the major challenge, the major obstacle that we're running into is getting the message out, informing the public that there is an alternative to the local newspaper.
So how are you going to get this message out?
Well, our official launch date will be complemented by a unique marketing program. Localpassing.com will be using Indiegogo as a crowdfunding tool to help with this launch. We expect the crowd to understand, since we're all ultimately consumers of the funeral industry, again, without exception.
And how do you expect the funeral industry is going to react to this good work of yours?
Well, think about it this way. Most families have a final expense budget. When it is reduced by $1,000 for the death notice, that means that the ultimate services the funeral directors can charge for is reduced by $1,000. With localpassing.com, for 1/10 the price, the deceased can be announced anywhere in the country or anywhere the immediate family lived.
You're right. It makes total sense. I expect that the funeral industry really can't afford to ignore the existence of localpassing.com.
That's correct. This means that under the current practice, the value proposition the funeral director can offer is hurt, and that is not good for the funeral director. It's not good for the consumer. And I tell you, I speak from experience. In addition, the process is much easier for the funeral director as well. Currently, he must send an obituary to a second, third, fourth source for republication, each with its own cost. With localpassing.com, he only has to post it on his own website, and he's done.
Well, Mike, I'd really like to help you out here. So what can I do to help you?
Well, I think that basically by using the media connections to help get the word out, we're moving into our next phase, and we need good people to make a small donation at Indiegogo.com so we can launch. Please let your media outlets know to visit Indiegogo.com and search for localpassing.com. And we have some fun gifts for all that help me. And if there are any members of the funeral industry out there that see this and see some benefit to it, visit the website. Our contact information is there, and we would be more than happy to hear from you and work with you.
Well, very creative entrepreneurial move on your part that really addresses some serious problems. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you, Kirsten.
We appreciate your attendance, everyone. And for those of you that are interested, Michael Robinson can be reached at localpassing.com. Thanks for watching.